Hello, everyone, and welcome to Limitless Live, where we are unlocking the power of science and soul to live extraordinary lives. I am Olga Binyaminov, your host, a biochemist, a mindset coach, an educator, and a founder of Exceed Learning Center. In today's session, you may consequently change how you think. You may also change how you connect and how you lead. We're going to dive into the silence of sabotage in our relationship and our inner peace. And that is assumption. We make them every single day. We assume what other people think. We assume why they did what they did. We assume what will happen before it actually happens. But assumptions are often that brain shortcut, a survival tool that is unchecked, and it becomes an invisible wall between us and the truth. We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. So let's start by seeing this more clearly. What are assumptions? An assumption is a belief that we accept as the truth without actually having any evidence. And neuroscience shows us that the brain seeks patterns. It fills all those gaps with our assumptions. Our brain hates uncertainty. So we assume to feel control, even if it costs us clarity. And there's a scientific insight to this. The brain's default mode is really this network. So when we're not engaged in specific tasks, we start imagining, we start projecting things, we start filling in those blanks that we have. And this is where assumptions are born. You see someone scrolling past your post, right, without actually liking it, and you assume that they have this beautiful life based on what you see. But maybe they didn't actually mean to show that. When you're looking through different posts, when you're looking through different things that people say, we assume things based on what we're thinking. But maybe that post of the beach that the person posted wasn't just for bragging, but to show you that they're having a bad day and that they're tired and this is what recharges them. When we see someone post something or somebody says something, a lot of times we assume things that would make us feel better with the assumptions, but often it actually doesn't. We develop that jealousy, we develop that uncertainty. So, what did you assume this week without actually checking? And why do we make those assumptions? We assume because it's efficient. And it's convenient for us, which doesn't always lead to the truth. A book that I just read with my book club this month, was The Four Agreements. And in the Four Agreements, there's a quote: we make the assumption that others know what we think, and we don't ask questions. Your brain is a meaning making machine. But those meanings are often recycled, and they're recycled in our head through our past. So, why does it really matter? Assumptions become autopilot reactions. These are things we do automatically, right away. They drive our emotional response based on fiction, not facts. They block our vulnerability and create this conflict where there's actually no conflict necessary. You don't need more willpower. You need more awareness to oppose to those assumptions. We assume in relationships, right? Think of how many relationships actually break down not because of betrayal, but because of an assumption of a betrayal. Assumptions are termites in a relationship. And I'm sure we all experienced the things that we say, that our spouse should know that. So you want your significant other to throw the garbage because the garbage is full, and you assume that they see that as well. And when they don't do that, you become upset at them, assuming they didn't want to do it, right? How many of us are aware of situation like that? Or saying like, you didn't call me, that means you don't care. You didn't invite me, that means I'm not important. You look upset, so I assume you are mad at me. These are tiny stories that create those walls in marriages, in friendships, or even in our children. I see this so often as a mother of three. When I pause and ask instead of assuming, I actually unlock connection instead of conflict. And in your romantic life, assumptions can mask your deepest fear: fear of abandonment, fear of rejections, or fear of not being enough. The truth is that these fears are not facts. So instead of saying, "Why didn't you respond?" try saying, "Can you help me understand what was happening in that moment?" Curiosity, as opposed to assumption, creates connection. When you assume, you create your own story, you create your own scenario. But when you are curious, you may find the correct answer. And it's a great example. I actually had a post on my Facebook page a little while ago with a ring, and I just wrote a nice quote that I wanted to quote. And everybody assumed that I got engaged. I got over 90 comments, and I got phone calls, and I got so many people assuming, and none of them even asked, "Is that what you meant?" What if I meant to show a manicure? What if I meant to just mention that quote? So assumptions are not just personal, they are cultural and they are systematic. We assume that we understand someone's income because they're going on vacation, so that means they have money. We assume that we understand somebody's worth, somebody's values, and most of all, we assume that we understand someone's intentions based on how they look, based on how they dress up, based on how they talk, they vote, and so on. This is where bias lives and where compassion dies out. We live in a world that assumes the more information we have, the better off we are. But sometimes less leads to clearer thinking. Be willing to meet people as they are, not as you expect them to be. At Exceed Learning Center, I teach children as young as 5 years old to question assumptions and to practice empathy. This is not just social emotional learning, this is a soul expansion education. Let's raise children and adults who are curious, not judgmental. So, how do we replace assumptions with curiosity? Assumptions are really close minded, curiosity opens hearts. And here's how you can start. The first thing that you see something that automatically makes you assume, pause and ask yourself, what am I assuming and what don't I know yet? Ask instead of guessing. Trade that assumption for compassionate questioning. Be mindful and actually be mindful of those triggers and actually understand that assumptions often arise from wounds, Pause, breathe, and think again. Embrace the I don't know. That's very important. It's not a weakness, it's actually wisdom. The smarter you are, the more complex your assumptions, and the more necessary it becomes to actually question them. As I always tell my students, your thoughts are not always facts, but they are always feedback. So let's bring this back home. I want you to really, really think deeply. Where did you assume? I want you to close your eyes, breathe deeply, and think one recent assumption that you made about someone. I want you to ask yourself, what was the story that I told myself? What did I do because of this? And what might have been the truth instead? Tell yourself that I choose curiosity over conclusion. I choose presence over presumption. I choose understanding over assumptions. Assumptions are really human. We all do that. But transformation begins with self awareness. If you catch yourself assume, but for a second, you try to understand if that is actually true. Imagine how different your relationship would be if you replaced judgment with actual genuine interest by asking questions. Imagine how much more peace you would have if you stopped battling the story in your mind and you actually would question them. Imagine how deeply you could love yourself and others if you just embrace not knowing. Not everything you think is actually true. So by letting go of this assumption, we let go of needing to be right. Instead of the need to be right, let's learn to be real. Most of the misunderstandings in the world could be avoided if people would simply took the time to ask, what else could this mean? Thank you so much for being here and for choosing growth and working with this limitless journey with me. Thank you for being here with me, and let's go forward and make fewer assumptions. Let's ask more questions. Let's ask better questions. Let's offer grace and seek a deeper truth. I will see you again when we continue next month with love and relationships. And until I meet you again, please remember, questions are much better than assumptions. Enjoy your day.